Good afternoon, and welcome back to Dr. Logic awkwardly does logic in her kitchen. In this video, the first in a sort of mini series of videos, I want to go back to one of our questions that we started off this entire series with, which is what is a good argument? Now, back then, back in October, I wanted to motivate the idea that there are many different ways that you can define good arguments, and that which one is the best one to take depends on the particular context that you're in. I said that we would talk more about this, but I then continued to give you three different logical systems which all have one definition of good argument, and that definition is deductive validity, which, as we pointed out a number of times, is this incredibly high bar that many arguments are not going to pass. And even of the ones that do pass, we often want to add another kind of requirement on top, which is that it actually has true premises. Now, the odds of you finding a deductively valid argument with true premises out in the wild are rather small, even in philosophical contexts. So, ordinarily, when we are arguing with each other, whether this is in the pugilistic fighting kind of arguing, or whether we are just trying to persuade somebody of something or to provide evidence for something, the standard of what counts as good is much weaker. In fact, it's much more based on the level that I picked out in my previous video as the epistemic level. It's about what we believe, what we know, what we have grounds to assert, what we have evidence for, what we have justification for, what we would be justified in concluding given the things that we think are true. So, whereas deductive validity is kind of operating at this very high level of there are facts out in the world, whether or not we have access to them, and they are what grounds the validity and soundness of an argument. This other level, this epistemic level, has to do with kind of practical argumentation, how we actually reason and use information in everyday contexts. So you might want to say, that sounds like a much more useful type of argument. Why have we not talked about good arguments in that kind of setting? These are the ones that you can actually use, that you can persuade people with, that you can use to change your own mind about particular information, that you can use to maybe bring to light something that you think is true, even if you don't have the knockdown, drag out argument for. So that's why we are coming back to this topic now and in the coming videos, because we're going to look at a system of logic, a system of reasoning, system of argumentation, however you want to call it, that specifically is interested in providing good epistemic grounds for things. And so, in that respect, what we're going to be doing now is actually considered, broadly speaking, a subfield of epistemology, because we will be looking at the ways in which we can know things, and in particular, one way which is based on argumentation, based on inference, based on patterns of reasoning that give us a different characterization of good arguments. Also, what we are going to be looking at is not yet more Western descent, boring logic that they do in ancient, medieval, modern Europe and its kind of descendants. But we're going to be looking beyond that. We aren't just interested in how do Europeans define logic, how do Europeans identify what counts as a good argument. No, we are interested in logic more broadly. And so we are going to be moving for the next couple of next series of videos to India and Tibet. Now, broadly speaking, when I say Indian philosophy, I don't want to indicate some sort of monolithic, megalithic, uniform sort of discipline. That is not the case. Within kind of Indian philosophy, you can find a number of different schools: the Buddhists, the Hindus, the Jains, and even within each one of those kind of broad categories, you can find many different subcategories. However, there are many aspects, particularly when it comes to the study of good argumentation and good reasoning, where there are shared characteristics across all of these. So I will try to be precise. And in fact, most of what we are going to talk about is going to be within the Buddhist tradition. However, I will say some things about the Hindu tradition, which is probably the most broad. The other ones kind of get increasingly more specific. But I will still continue to say things like Indian philosophy, Indian argumentation, because it is a way of picking up on the fact that there is this commonality across these various different subdisciplines. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there as a little bit of a terminological notice, but to again emphasize that much of what we will be talking about will be specific to the Buddhist tradition. And that's why we'll be looking both at texts from India and from Tibet, because there was a very strong kind of, in the Middle Ages, when these texts were being written, when these ideas were being developed, when these theories were being codified, there wasn't really this kind of clear boundary between the two. It's this entire geographical region spreading out through China into Japan. So again, when I say Indian, I don't necessarily mean geographically restricted to India. This is a tradition that's spread through all of kind of Southeast Asia and permeated the philosophical thinking of that area in the same way that ancient Greek philosophy permeated the Western kind of European tradition. So I hope you're excited by that little teaser of what we're going to be doing, and join me next time when we start getting into the details. Take care. Cheers.